Hello, and welcome to Social Science Weekly, where we take the most important social science papers, giving you just the facts and none of the spin. Today, rather than looking at a research paper, we're going to look at a data set, namely the All Sides media bias data that classifies US news outlets in terms of their political bias. This is a collaborative project involving many people. You can go to the All Sides website to see the profiles of the folks who are involved, which includes, appropriately, their political biases. The All Sides media bias dataset measures the political bias of popular news media in the United States. And this is based on the online political content on those websites. They are assigned a political bias rating on a 5-point scale, ranging from lean left, centre, lean right, and right. These ratings are interesting in and of themselves, but are also useful in academic studies. For example, the research on news sentiment that we presented in episode 3 of Social Science Weekly. All Sides uses a range of different methods that takes into account both public and expert opinion. And this breaks down into 4 main approaches that we will dive into. Those approaches are editorial review, blind bias surveys, independent reviews, and community feedback. The idea being that when these methods all agree with each other, we can have a lot of confidence in the rating, such as in the case of the New York Times. But on the flip side, we have less confidence when the ratings do not agree, like in the case of the Daily Mail. While it's not entirely clear how all sides arrive at their final judgment, they do publish a bias profile for every news website that they rate, and this lays out all of the evidence they've collected. And you can find these bias profiles on the All Sides website. Okay, so this is how they do it. First, an expert at All Sides conducts an independent review to give a kind of initial bias rating. Now, this takes into account all of the low-hanging fruit that's out there, like the academic studies and journalistic investigations that have already been done, and also just basic things like what the news website says about its own bias. Then comes community feedback. And this is where any visitor to the All Sides website are allowed to disagree or agree with the political bias rating that's been assigned. And if a user disagrees with the rating on the website, they can state their own perception of the news website's bias, which is then included in that political bias profile on the website. Now, community feedback is actually not given a great deal of weight by the folks at All Sides, and this is because, frankly, it's not a controlled sample. We don't really know who is providing the feedback, and in particular, we don't know their political bias. So we know that personal political bias affects the way we see the news. Folks with right-wing bias tend to think that media is more left-wing than it is, and the same is true the other way around. And this is where the blind bias survey comes in, which is a more controlled way that all sides use to capture public opinion. So this is how that works. So all of the participants must take an 8-question political bias test so that in the final rating, they can control for the political bias of the people in the survey. So, each participant in the survey rates a series of articles for political bias without knowing where those articles came from. This is the blind part of the blind bias survey. This means that everything that could identify where the article came from, like the branding of the news website, all of that is removed. So the participants only see the plain text of both the headline and the article in order to assign their rating. Now, the blind bias is given quite a bit of weight and is very useful, but it's not perfect. Remember, the participants are only looking at a select few articles and are only seeing just plain text. And details like pictures and branding and the article placement on the website, this is actually sometimes where the indicators of political bias lie. And this is where the editorial review comes in. This gives a more complete picture of the news website's bias by analysing multiple articles over time, and also looking at features of the website like the homepage, the sorts of photos that are used, article placement and things like that. In short, the whole presentation of the political news is considered in the editorial review. All Sides conducts these reviews using a panel of experts. Again, they choose these experts from across the political spectrum. These experts are looking for specific indicators from the news website that indicate bias, such as spin, slant, the sorts of photos that are used, the word choice, the kinds of stories that are being omitted, and also sensationalism, but many others as well. During the process, panel members are allowed to discuss and debate their observations with each other, but ultimately each expert submits their own final score, and the final bias rating is the average of all of these individual expert ratings. Okay, so that's how All Sides combines public and expert opinion to form their political bias ratings for US news websites. However, there are a few things to keep in mind about this data. Number one, which we've been talking about the whole way through, the data only examines popular news websites in the United States and only gathers opinions from people in the United States. This means you probably won't get a sense of the media bias in any other country. And two, the political scale All Sides use is one-dimensional. It runs from left to right. So this obviously will not capture very nuanced political positions. And finally, the last thing to bear in mind is that these ratings are based on online content only. So these ratings do not reflect the physical newspapers or TV or radio or any other medium, just online content. Okay, so now on to the findings. What do these All Sides political bias ratings reveal? The first thing to notice is that many of the mainstream news media in the US tend to either lean left, like the Washington Post, New York Times, and Associated Press, or have a pure left bias, like CNN and the New York Times opinion section. In fact, visits to lean left and left news outlets accounts for over half of the total website visits that we see. Also, All Sides looked at how political bias of news websites has changed over time, as many of the websites they've rated have been rated many times over the years. It turns out that many news websites have moved to the left since 2016. Perhaps most strikingly is CNN, that has moved from the centre in 2016 all the way to the left in 2022. In contrast to this leftward shift, there are only a few examples of news websites becoming either more moderate, like Newsweek, or moving to the right, like Fox News. So, wrapping up. All Sides media bias ratings take news websites that are popular in the United States and assigns them a political bias rating ranging from left to right. They use 4 different methods that take into account both public opinion and expert opinion. They then combine the results to get a final rating. And what these data reveal is that there is a general left-leaning bias in mainstream and popular news websites in the United States, and that there has been a leftward drift since 2016. Okay, we will provide a link to the All Sides website and other interesting resources in the description below. If you found this useful, please like and subscribe. It helps us out and means that we can make more of this content. And to keep up to date with Social Science Weekly, you can get us on all the different social medias. And that's it for Social Science Weekly, bringing you just the facts, none of the spin, from the best and most important social science.